Hi class, I'm ready to try the Chapter 2 sample exercises. So I want to do the open folder command in Visual Studio.code. But before I do, I'm going to check my extensions. Remember we installed some extensions in Chapter 1 to get Visual Studio Code configured properly for our development. The extensions we installed were C# for Visual Studio Code, C# XML documentation comment extensions, MS Build project tools, the REST client, and the IL build. There it is, the IL spy .net decompiler. Okay, so we need those extensions installed. Now, my Visual Studio Code was upset with me today because it wanted .NET 6.0. So I downloaded and installed the .NET 6.0 SDK, and I'm ready to create my Chapter 2 project folders. So I'm going to choose File, Open Folder, and I'm going to navigate to the code folder that I have created for our code. I already have my Chapter 1 folder, so I'll create a new Chapter 2. And inside my Chapter 2 folder, I want to create a Basics folder. And that's the one I'm going to select. Now I need to open a terminal to issue the terminal command to create my new project. .NET new console, console being the template that we would like to use. Now because I've installed the new version of .NET Framework, I need to add the framework specification, and that is framework. Let me check my notes. .NET 5.0. All one word. Now, after adding those new parameters, I'm going to create this console project. And we need to add those parameters because we want the old .NET 5 console template because that matches our textbook. So I'm going to go to our program.cs file now. Everything looks good the way I remember it. Yes, I do want to install these assets. And now I'm ready to start doing my project development. Before I do so, I'm going to check what version of C# my compiler is running. I'll type # or hashtag error version. Now this is going to give me an error, but I'm going to go ahead and run it. And then I should be able to look at, I'm going to choose show errors. And I'm looking at my problems here, but I can see exactly what they're saying. It tells me what compiler version I'm running, and it's language version 9, which is okay. It's high as we wanted, right? So kind of a interesting way to get our compiler version. Now I'm going to comment out that line of code that's giving me an error. I'd like to look at some particulars about C# in my practice project. When we're working with C#, we'll see that we have statements, which are like sentences. We have blocks of code delimited by curly braces that are like paragraphs. And so we'll use lots of things in C# that are similar to other languages. The first thing I'd like to do is add some comments. So I'm going to put the comments right under my error version line. You notice it still has a red squiggly line. I'm okay with that. I want to do a block comment. So to do a block comment, I will do / star to begin the comment and / to end it. Now, in between those, I can have as many comment lines as I would like. I'm going to put some program information here. It's always good for us to put some header information as we develop software, because it reminds us the purpose and when we first developed things. Different companies will have different requirements for their header comments. Our header comments for our class will require this information. So I have the program name, the developer as me, and you should put your name, and you can put, an attribute to your textbook if you like, from C# text, or whatever makes you feel comfortable with putting your name there. Then the date that you developed it and the purpose of the code. Now we're going to look a little bit more at single line comments. We could put a comment on an existing line of code, for example, on our using system statement. We'll say a semicolon indicates the end of a statement, kind of like our punctuation in English. Let's go down to our namespace, and in our opening curly brace, we'll put a comment. An open brace indicates the start of a block. And then we could go to the matching closing curly brace and say, put a comment like a close brace indicates the end of a block. Another comment in our console.writeLine statement, we could put, here is a statement. And then we always know that we want our code to be within these two curly braces associated with the main method for now, until we get a little bit more understanding. Whenever we're using C# vocabulary, we say it is made up of keywords, symbol characters, and types. And we'll kind of emphasize that as we go. Some of the reserved keywords that you're going to see are going to be including things like namespace, class, static, void, string. So we see a lot of keywords highlighted in blue in our code editor. Now we could change that color scheme if we wanted. If we go to File, Preferences, Color Theme, you should see a lot of different choices. Right now, mine is Light Visual Studio. You can change to a dark theme if you like, a medium, kind of in between. So you're welcome to try the different color themes and set up one that you like. I'm going to stick with the light theme because I think it's easier to see in videos. If you disagree, let me know and we'll see what we can figure out. We'll have a survey or something. So right now, my program says that I have 2 errors. Just really upset about this one. I'm going to go ahead and choose Run without debugging. And hopefully it will realize there are no errors and come out with my hello world statement. Sometimes the IDE can get behind and report errors that aren't really there anymore. And when we run, we force a compile, and so we can get rid of some of those. As we're writing our code, we'll see that we have to have our keywords and other specific pieces of syntax coded exactly correct. For example, in our console.writeLine statement, there's an uppercase L. If I change that to lowercase, that will not be a recognized verb or method or action in C#. So I'll get a red squiggly telling me I've got an error. I can put that uppercase L back the way it should be, and the development environment will recognize that I've corrected that error because it now recognizes that method or that verb. Let's use our console.writeLine a little bit more. I'm going to put some new code underneath it. And first I'm going to have a comment and say the following line outputs a carriage return. That line would be console.writeLine with an empty open and close parenthesis. Whenever I'm using a method or a verb, I'm always going to follow it with a set of parentheses. For the WriteLine command, if my parentheses are empty, I just write out a blank line. Now the next line, we want to output a greeting with a carriage return. And the console.writeLine automatically does a carriage return. So all I need to put is my greeting. Hello, Renee. And I'll close that statement. Make sure you say hello to yourself. Finally, I'm going to output a formatted number and date and a carriage return. So my console.writeLine will automatically do that carriage return. But I'm going to output a formatted message that's going to be kind of long. So I'm going to move down to the line below my command, trying to get that to go away. There we go. And you can see that since I pressed enter in between the open and close parenthesis, that's an acceptable place for me to continue this C# statement. I'm going to put the string that I would like to output. I would like it to say temperature on, and then I'd like to display today's date. I'm going to use a C# keyword to do that. So I'm going to put a placeholder in my string to say within this string, I'd like to hold a place number 0, and I'm going to format that using the uppercase D formatting, which just happens to format a date using words. Now I'm going to continue on with my string because I'm still saying what I'd like to output. After the date, I want to say the word is, and then I'd like to specify a temperature. So I'm going to use a placeholder 1 to say I'm going to put my temperature here. I'm going to follow it by a C to indicate it's in Celsius, and then I'm going to have a period to close out my line of code. Once I do that, I'm going to have a comma, and then I'm going to specify what variables I would like to use to fill in those placeholders. I'd like today's date, which I can specify as datetime.today. I'd like that to be used for that placeholder 0. And then for my temperature in placeholder 1, I think I want the number 23.4. That's it. I'm going to go to my closing parenthesis and put my semicolon to complete that line of code. Let's run our program now with these additional console.writeLine statements in it. We should see our output, and here's our original hello world output, then our blank space, our greeting, and finally our formatted output. So our formatted output shows date time dot today here where we had our 0 placeholder, and then it shows that value 23.4 where we had our 1 placeholder. So we can do some nice formatting with our output that way. When we're looking at our C# language, our verbs are our actions, and our verbs can take actions on many things. In English, verbs take action upon nouns. Well, in C#, our nouns are types, fields, and variables. So we can have a lot of those kinds of things. So let's do some code here to look at how many keywords there are in C#, or how many types there are. I'm going to add some code to our existing program. So let's do that. First, up at the top, I want to add some additional using statements. I'm going to add using system.linq. And if you notice, the IntelliSense editor there is recommending I use system.linq, so I could press tab to accept that data and input it into my program. I'll try that with my other one. I want using system.reflection. That's the right one. Tab, and then put my semicolon to end my line of code. Now I want my new output to come after all of the output that we've had so far. So I'm going to go to the last line of code where I ended our statement on line 26. Yours should be close to that. You could be a line or two off. So remember, we're looking for the end of this last statement, our console.writeLine. I'm going to press enter a couple of times to leave a blank space. I'm going to put in the comment that our textbook has. Loop through the assemblies that this app references. Now, inside or after this comment, I'm going to type the code exactly the way the textbook has it, because this is code that I haven't learned yet, so it's going to be something that is kind of meaningless at this point. But I have the keyword for each, and then open parentheses. The variable type var, which means I'm not sure what kind of type it is. I'll let you decide, C#. Kind of lazy of me. I'm going to call this variable R, and it's in this group of things called assembly.getEntryAssembly. I can arrow key down to get entry assembly and press tab to have that dropped into my code. And then I want open, close parentheses. And I'm going to press enter. And on this next line of code, I want to continue with the dot. And I'm looking for get referenced assemblies. I could type that in, or I can use the IntelliSense editor to help me find it. Now, because that was a verb, I need another set of open and close parentheses. That should make the majority of my errors go away. I'm going to move over so that my cursor is after that closing parenthesis to press enter and start the body of this for each statement. How do I do bodies? Curly braces. So there's my open curly brace. Now, within this body, I'm going to do some things. I want to load the assembly so we can read its details. Remember, this code is just samples. We're not really to a point where we understand what it's doing yet. We would just like to duplicate it. Under this comment, I apologize for my cough coming. I'm going to do first a line of code where I set up a var type variable named A. And I'm going to use assembly.load inside my parentheses, new assembly name, inside my parentheses, r dot full name. That ends that line of code. So I'm going to put a semicolon. My next comment, I'm going to declare a variable to count the number of methods. I'll call it method count, and I'm going to set that variable equal to 0. Within the body here, I'm going to do another for each, open parenthesis, var t in a dot define types, open curly brace, method count plus equal t dot get methods, open close parenthesis, dot count, open close parenthesis, end of statement. Now, I want to move to after my closing parenthesis. Oops, I wanted a comment there, and I need 2 slashes instead of 1. This is the end of that for each statement. And then the next set of closing curly braces are the end of the first for each statement. And I want this code that I'm going to add to go in between these two. In between these 2 closing curly braces. Output the count of types and their methods. I'm going to do my console write line statement. And the first thing I'm going to have is a placeholder 0. And I want to use special formatting for that. It's going to be n, which is a number with 0 decimal places. Okay, that's my first format specifier, but it should be within double quotes. I'll let those out. Now, I'm continuing on my output string after my 0 placeholder, and I'm going to say the word types with new placeholder 1, formatted as a numeric with 0 decimal places, methods in another placeholder, and finally the word assembly. Now at the end of my string, I'm going to put the comma because I'm going to start saying what things should be used for those replacement values. And the first thing I want is A, my variable A, and I want its defined types, and I want a count of those. That's the first thing I want as a replacement parameter. Next, I want my method count variable to be displayed. And lastly, on its own line, I want the name. Now after r.name, I'm going to close my parenthesis. Oops, I already have my closed parenthesis on the next line, so I'm going to go to it and add my semicolon. Now it looks a little bit different than the textbook, and there's a couple of reasons for that. If you're looking at your textbook, you might be seeing that in your textbook, each of the items that we've specified in the list of things to be replacements have this terminology arg0, arg1, arg2 after them. We're going to see where that comes from, but for right now, we don't want to type that. We just want to kind of ignore it. Secondly, their closing parenthesis ended up on this line with r.name. That's fine. We could use that syntax also. Now I'm ready to run this program, so I could go to my terminal and type .net run. Now, if I do that, that's the same as using my run command. What I'm seeing as output is what is expected from our textbook. They say 0 types with 0 methods. So our runtime only knows how to run code. It doesn't know how to read code. But console, our console library, has 46 different things or types with 660 different verbs in them. Our LINQ has 103 types with 1,094. And I have them, these two switched from what our textbook has, so we're real close. So good job. That code was really intense and pretty advanced. I'm going to leave it here on the screen for a moment for you so that you can get it all typed in. It starts here with this comment, loop through the assemblies that this app references, and then it ends with this closing curly brace. Now, if you notice, this code read through all of the libraries that we had imported from our project or in our project. So that's what output we were getting. Now, why does their code show that arg thing? I'm going to keep looking. I believe it's an extension they have installed. So we need to install that same extension so that we'll see those keywords and it won't be as confusing to you. So that's going to be something for us to look at. Before we do that, we have another project to do in Chapter 2, so I'm going to save this one and close this project folder so that I'm ready for the next one. I could leave this open, but I'd like to clean up, so I'm going to close this folder. Now I'm going to end our video. We'll be back to look at other projects in Chapter 2. Thank you.